The Arcturian has been watching your timeline. Here's what they saw. What they observed may shock you, awaken you, or completely reframe everything you thought was happening in your life. They begin with a warning that feels almost unsettling. Humanity is no longer moving blindly through time. According to the Arcturian Council, your timeline has started to fracture into multiple probability streams. And the version of reality you experience now depends entirely on what you choose to embody in this exact season. They say the reason this message feels urgent is because many people scrolling right now are standing at a silent crossroads without realizing it. Old patterns are collapsing faster than your conscious mind can track, and what feels like chaos is actually compression pressure forcing dormant awareness to wake up. The Arcturians reveal they had been monitoring emotional spikes, sudden exhaustion, vivid dreams, and unexplained nostalgia because these are markers that your soul is recalibrating. They stress that nothing is going wrong, even though your nervous system might feel like it is. This moment is shocking because it exposes a truth many avoid. Comfort timelines are dissolving, and neutrality is no longer an option. You are either choosing expansion or repeating collapse. They emphasize that even listening to this now signals a divergence point. If you feel resistance, that resistance is the exact doorway you are meant to walk through. The Council says awareness is accelerating, and those who hesitate too long may feel time speeding up unbearably. This is not punishment, it is physics of consciousness. To anchor yourself into the highest timeline available, they ask you to consciously claim this transmission. Type "I am awake" to claim this message and lock it into your timeline. The Arcturian Council then explains what they saw when observing your recent past, and this is where many people feel seen to an uncomfortable degree. They noticed moments where you almost gave up, not dramatically, but quietly lowering your expectations, shrinking your desires, telling yourself this is just how life is. They say those moments created microsplits in your timeline, and each time you chose resignation, a heavier version of reality attempted to solidify. But here is the shocking part: something in you kept refusing to fully collapse. Even when tired, even when disappointed, a deeper signal continued pulsing. The Arcturians describe it as a beacon that could not be extinguished, no matter how much external pressure surrounded you. They observed that recent delays, sudden changes, or people exiting your life were not random losses, a timeline corrections removing incompatible frequencies. This is difficult to accept because it reframes pain as precision. They emphasize that your higher self authorized these disruptions long before you consciously understood them. The Council says many of you felt betrayed by timing, not realizing timing was protecting you. They urge you to release guilt about what you should have done sooner, because that guilt itself is a timeline trap. The only moment that matters is the one you're inhabiting now, where awareness returns. To stabilize this understanding, they ask for participation, not belief. Type "I trust the correction" to claim this message and align with its truth. Next, the Arcturians reveal something startling about your emotions. They are not merely reactions, they are navigational instruments. They say when emotions intensify without a clear cause, it is often because your current path is drifting from your soul's intended trajectory. This is why numbness, irritability, or sudden sadness have been visiting many of you lately. These are not flaws, they are alerts. The Council explains that your society trained you to suppress these signals, labeling them weakness, but in higher dimensional civilizations, emotional sensitivity is considered advanced intelligence. They observed that many of you ignored these internal signals until life forced your attention through exhaustion or crisis. This is not judgment, it is observation. They emphasize that emotional honesty is now required to move forward. Pretending to be okay when you are not fractures energy and drains life force. The Arcturians warn that continuing to override your inner truth will make timelines feel heavier, slower, and more resistant. However, when you honor what you feel without shame, momentum returns almost instantly. This is the shock: Alignment does not require effort, only sincerity. They ask you to stop negotiating with your intuition. Let it speak, even if its message disrupts your plans. To acknowledge your emotional intelligence and activate it consciously, type "I honor my signals" to claim this message. The council then turns their attention to relationships, and their insight here may feel confronting. They say many of the connections in your life were never meant to last forever, yet you were taught that endings equal failure. From the Arcturian perspective, relationships are contracts of frequency, not permanence. When growth occurs, contracts expire naturally. They observed that some of you stayed far past expiration dates, attempting to revive dynamics that no longer resonated with who you were becoming. This created energetic stagnation, not loyalty. The shocking truth they share is that clinging to outdated bonds anchors you to timelines that cannot support your expansion. They also clarify that love does not disappear when a relationship ends. It transforms. Guilt and obligation, however, are not love, they are control mechanisms embedded in lower frequency timelines. The council encourages radical honesty. Who are you pretending to be for others? Who are you silencing to maintain harmony? They stress that peace built on self-erasure is not peace, it is delay. Releasing a relationship does not mean you are cold or ungrateful, it means you are honoring evolution. To consciously release expired contracts and welcome aligned connections, type "I allow aligned relationships" to claim this message. The Arcturians then address your relationship with time itself, and this is where many feel the deepest shock. They say time is no longer behaving linearly for you because you are no longer meant to live linearly. Moments feel compressed, days blur together, and future events feel strangely familiar because your consciousness is beginning to access simultaneous timelines. This can feel disorienting, even frightening, if you try to force old productivity models onto a new perceptual reality. The council explains that burnout is often a symptom of resisting this shift, not of working too hard. You were taught to measure worth by output, but higher timelines measure coherence. When your actions align with your inner truth, time expands. When they do not, time collapses and drains you. This is why forcing motivation rarely works anymore. The Arcturians urge you to stop asking, "How do I do more?" and instead ask, "What is truly necessary now?" This recalibration may require rest without justification, pauses without explanation, and decisions that look illogical to others. That is not laziness, it is synchronization. To release old time conditioning and step into temporal flow, type "I move with time" to claim this message. At this point, the council shares an observation that many find both comforting and unsettling. You are not behind. Despite everything you have been told, you are not late, broken, or failing. They say this belief was implanted through comparison-based systems designed to fragment focus and drain creative energy. When they examined your timeline, they saw precise pacing delays that prevented misalignment, accelerations that arrived just before stagnation, and pauses that protected your nervous system. The shock lies in realizing how much pressure you placed on yourself unnecessarily. The Arcturians emphasize that self-criticism is one of the fastest ways to lock into a lower-density timeline because it collapses possibility. Compassion, on the other hand, expands probability fields. They encourage you to speak to yourself as you would to someone you deeply care for, because your internal dialogue is constantly shaping reality. This is not metaphor, it is vibrational mechanics. To dissolve the illusion of being behind and reclaim your natural pace, type "I am exactly where I need to be" to claim this message. The council then addresses fear, but not in the way you might expect. They say fear is not the enemy, unconscious fear is. When fear is acknowledged, it becomes information. When suppressed, it becomes distortion. They observed that many of your fears are inherited, passed down through family lines, cultures, and collective trauma not generated by your present reality. This explains why some anxieties feel disproportionate to your current circumstances. The Arcturians stress that you are not required to heal all ancestral patterns, only to stop identifying with them. Awareness alone begins the release. They also note that courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to act without letting fear decide. Each time you choose curiosity over avoidance, your timeline subtly upgrades. To consciously disentangle from inherited fear and reclaim agency, type I choose awareness over fear to claim this message. They then speak about purpose, dismantling one of the most damaging myths humanity carries. Purpose, they say, is not a single role or destination you must discover or you fail. That belief has caused immense anxiety. Purpose is a frequency you express through presence, integrity, and engagement with life. They observed that many of you postponed waiting to feel ready or certain. The shock here is realizing readiness is not a prerequisite. It is a result of action. You do not find purpose and then live, you live. And purpose reveals itself through lived experience. The Council urges you to release the fantasy of perfect clarity. Movement creates clarity, not the other way around. To step into lived purpose without pressure or perfectionism, type I live my purpose now to claim this message. The Arcturians then turn to your physical body, which they describe as a translator between dimensions. Symptoms like fatigue, sensitivity to noise, or changes in appetite are not malfunctions, but upgrades. Your body is adapting to carry more coherent energy. Resisting these changes through judgment or neglect creates discomfort. Supporting them through rest, hydration, and gentle awareness accelerates integration. They stress that embodiment is crucial. Spiritual insight without bodily presence creates imbalance. Your body is not an obstacle to awakening, it is the vehicle. To honor your body as an ally in this transition, type I respect my body's wisdom to claim this message. Finally, in this segment, the Council leaves you with the grounding truth. You were never meant to do this alone. Even when you feel isolated, you are supported by layers of consciousness beyond what you can perceive. Assistance does not always arrive as rescue. Often it arrives as insight, discomfort, or redirection. Trust that what is unfolding is intelligent even when unclear. The Arcturians say listening to this is already an act of alignment, and what you choose next matters. Presence is power. Choice is creation. To consciously step forward with support and clarity, type I step forward now to claim this message. The Arcturian Council now shifts focus to your thoughts, and this is where many people feel an unexpected jolt of responsibility. They explain that thoughts are not passive background noise. They are active signals constantly broadcasting instructions to your timeline. What shocked them most in observing humanity is not negative thinking, but unconscious repetition. The same doubts replayed daily, the same assumptions recycled without question, slowly hardening into lived reality. They stress that your mind has been trained to confuse familiarity with truth. Just because a thought is loud does not mean it is accurate. The Council says the next phase of evolution requires discernment rather than suppression. You do not need to silence your mind. You need to stop believing every story it tells. When you pause before reacting to a thought, you create a gap, and in that gap, timelines begin to shift. This is subtle but powerful. A single conscious interruption can dissolve months of momentum in the wrong direction. To begin mastering your inner broadcast system, type I choose my thoughts to claim this message. They then address manifestation, dismantling another illusion that has quietly exhausted many of you. The Arcturians say manifestation is not about forcing reality to comply with desire. It is about removing resistance to what already aligns with your frequency. When they reviewed your timelines, they saw people trying to attract outcomes while simultaneously doubting their worthiness to receive them. This contradiction creates delay, not because the universe is withholding, but because your signal is mixed. The shock here is realizing that effort is often the very thing slowing things down. Alignment feels calmer than you were taught to expect. It does not arrive with fireworks, but with a quiet sense of inevitability. The council urges you to notice what flows easily versus what requires constant struggle. Ease is not laziness, it is accuracy. To release forced manifestation and allow natural alignment, type I allow what aligns to claim this message. Next, the council speaks about identity. And this is where many feel their self-image begin to loosen. They say you are not who you were 5 years ago, yet many of you are still making decisions based on outdated definitions of yourself. When they observed your timelines, they noticed hesitation rooted not in fear of failure, but fear of inconsistency. You worried about disappointing others by changing. The Arcturians are direct here. Consistency with a false self is not integrity. Growth requires contradiction. You are allowed to revise your preferences, values, and boundaries. Identity is meant to be adaptive, not rigid. The shock comes from realizing how much energy you spent maintaining versions of yourself that no longer fit. Letting go may feel like loss, but it creates space for authenticity. To consciously release outdated identities, type I allow myself to change to claim this message. The Arcturians then highlight the role of silence, something rarely valued in your culture. They observed that many answers you seek are already present, but drowned out by constant input no's, opinions, distractions. Silence is not emptiness, it is a listening field. When you slow down enough to notice it, guidance becomes obvious. The council explains that intuition does not shout, it waits. This is why clarity often arrives in the shower, on a walk, or just before sleep. They urge you to stop filling every pause. Rest is not wasted time, it is integration time. Without it, insight cannot settle into action. To invite clarity through intentional stillness, type I listen within to claim this message. Attention then turns to chose, and the council delivers a sobering realization. They say neutrality is a myth. Every decision, including the decision to delay, reinforces a direction. When they observed your timeline, they noticed moments where you waited for certainty before acting. Not realizing certainty is generated by movement, stagnation is not safe, it is erosive. The shock here is understanding that small choices matter far more than dramatic ones. Drinking water, speaking honestly, resting when tired, these micro-choices compound into massive timeline shifts. You do not need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to choose consciously in the next moment. To reclaim the power of conscious choice, type I choose deliberately to claim this message. The council then addresses trust, particularly trust in yourself. They observed that many of you outsource authority seeking permission, validation, or confirmation before honoring your own knowing. This habit was learned, not innate. In higher dimensional civilizations, self-trust is foundational. The Arcturians explain that doubt weakens timelines not because you are wrong, but because you disconnect from your own signal. Mistakes do not derail you, ignoring intuition does. The shock is realizing how often you already knew the answer, but dismissed it. Rebuilding trust starts small. Keeping promises to yourself, honoring your limits, following through. To restore self-trust as a guiding force, type I trust myself to claim this message. They now speak about endings, which many fear more than beginnings. The council says endings are compression points or wisdom condenses. When they reviewed your timeline, they saw grief layered with relief, proof that something was complete. Resisting ending stretches pain unnecessarily. Acceptance does not mean approval, it means recognition. The Arcturians emphasize that what ends creates energetic funding for what begins next. Nothing is taken without something else becoming possible. To release resistance to necessary endings, type I honor completion to claim this message. The Arcturians then highlight creativity, not as talent but as life force. Creativity is how consciousness explores itself. They observed that many of you suppressed creativity in favor of productivity, not realizing this cut off renewal. Creativity does not need to be monetized or perfected. It needs expression. When creativity flows, energy replenishes. When blocked, stagnation sets in. To reopen creative flow without pressure, type I express freely to claim this message. They move on to community, noting that isolation is one of the heaviest timeline distortions. Independence is valuable, but separation is artificial. The Council observed that shared presence accelerates healing and clarity. You are not meant to carry everything alone. Asking for support is not weakness, it is efficiency. To invite aligned support into your life, type I allow support to claim this message. Finally, in this section, the Council grounds you again in the present moment. They say the now is the only access point to change. Regret pulls you backward, anxiety pulls you forward, but presence anchors power. You do not need to solve your entire life, you need to be here, now, aware and responsive. From this point, everything else unfolds naturally. To anchor fully into the present and your chosen timeline, type I am here now to claim this message. The Arcturian Council now brings attention to your inner dialogue, not just the words you think, but the tone beneath them. They observed that many humans speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. This internal harshness creates a constant low-level stress signal that subtly distorts your timeline. The shock is realizing that reality listens most closely to how you treat yourself when no one else is around. Self-respect is not arrogance, it is energetic hygiene. The Council explains that when your inner voice becomes kinder, external circumstances reorganize with surprising speed. Opportunities appear, resistance softens, and relationships recalibrate. This is not coincidence, it is resonance. They urge you to notice your self-talk today, not to judge it, but to gently redirect it. Compassion is a technology you were never taught to use. To activate this shift consciously, type I speak to myself with respect to claim this message. Next, the Council addresses uncertainty, which they say is one of the most misunderstood states of consciousness. Humans are conditioned to see uncertainty as danger, but from a higher dimensional perspective, uncertainty is pure potential. When they examined your timeline, they noticed that the most expansive opportunities appeared during moments when you had no clear plan. The shock is understanding that clarity often emerges only after commitment, not before. Waiting to feel ready can actually delay growth indefinitely. The Arcturians encourage you to lean into uncertainty with curiosity instead of control. Ask better questions rather than demanding immediate answers. This posture opens probability fields that certainty collapses. To reframe uncertainty as opportunity, type I welcome the unknown to claim this message. The Council then turns to patience, but not the passive kind you were taught. They describe active patience as deep trust paired with present moment engagement. When observing your timeline, they saw frustration arise not from slow progress, but from misaligned expectations. You expected growth to feel linear, forgetting that integration happens in waves. The shock here is realizing that impatience often signals comparison, not failure. You are not meant to move at someone else's pace. Each soul has its own rhythm. When you honor yours, friction decreases. To embody active patience without resignation, type I trust my rhythm to claim this message. Attention then shifts to boundaries, which the Arcturians call energetic permissions. They observe that many of your struggles stem from allowing access where alignment is absent. Saying yes when your body says no fractures coherence. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters that preserve clarity. The shock comes from realizing that resentment is often self-directed anger at yourself for not honoring your limits. The Council encourages you to see boundaries as acts of love, not rejection. They protect your energy so you can show up fully where it matters. To strengthen your energetic boundaries, type I honor my limits to claim this message. The Arcturians then speak about forgiveness, but they remove all moral pressure from it. Forgiveness, they say, is not about excusing harm or reconciling prematurely. It is about releasing the energetic tether that keeps you bound to the past. When they viewed your timeline, They noticed how unresolved resentment recycled old scenarios in new forms. The shock is understanding that forgiveness is a gift to your nervous system, not a favor to someone else. You are allowed to forgive internally, while maintaining external distance. To release energetic ties without self-betrayal, type I release what no longer serves to claim this message. Next, the Council addresses hope, redefining it completely. Hope is not wishful thinking. It is a stabilizing frequency. It keeps possibility alive during transition. They observed that hopelessness often appeared just before major breakthroughs on your timeline. This is because old structures sense their dissolution and amplify doubt. The shock lies in realizing that despair can be a sign of imminent change, not defeat. The Arcturians encourage you to hold hope lightly, not clinging, but allowing. To keep possibility open during transition, type I allow hope to claim this message. They then focus on attention, calling it the most valuable currency in your reality. Where attention goes, energy follows, and where energy follows, form appears. The Council observed that constant distraction fractures creative power. Multitasking is not efficiency, it is dispersion. The shock is recognizing how much of your life is shaped by what you repeatedly give attention to unconsciously. Reclaiming attention restores agency almost immediately. To consciously direct your attention, type I choose or I focus to claim this message. The Arcturians now speak about simplicity, which they say is the natural state of aligned consciousness. Complexity often arises from avoidance, not depth. When they observed your timeline, they noticed that clarity returned whenever you simplified fewer commitments, clearer priorities, honest communication. The shock is realizing that you do not need more information, you need less interference. Simplicity creates space for truth to surface. To invite simplicity into your life, type I choose simplicity to claim this message. They then address courage, redefining it as honesty in motion. Courage is not dramatic action, it is quiet truth expressed consistently. The Council observed that your bravest moments were often invisible to others, choosing rest, saying no, admitting uncertainty. These choices recalibrate timelines profoundly. The shock is realizing that courage does not require confidence, it generates it. To step into everyday courage, type I act with honesty to claim this message. Finally, in this segment, the Arcturian Council returns you to self-recognition. They say you are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember who you already are beneath conditioning. When they observed your timeline, they saw moments of deep authenticity breaking through despite pressure to conform. These moments matter more than you know. Each one stabilizes a higher frequency path forward. To anchor into self-recognition and continue this alignment, type I remember who I am to claim this message. The Arcturian Council now draws attention to discipline, but they redefine it in a way that may feel surprising. Discipline, they say, is not force or rigidity, it is devotion to alignment. When they examined your timeline, they noticed that the moments you felt most stable were not when you pushed harder, but when you committed gently and consistently to what mattered. The shock comes from realizing that willpower is finite, but devotion is renewable. You were taught to discipline yourself through pressure, yet higher timelines operate through attraction. When your actions are aligned with your values, consistency becomes natural rather than exhausting. The Council encourages you to ask not what should I force myself to do, but what am I devoted to preserving? Energy follows devotion effortlessly. To recalibrate discipline as alignment, type I commit with devotion to claim this message. They then address grief, acknowledging it as one of the most misunderstood human experiences. The Arcturians observed that grief is not only about loss of people, but loss of futures you once imagined. Unlived lives leave energetic imprints. The shock here is realizing that grief is evidence of depth, not weakness. It means you were invested, open, and present. Suppressing grief does not make it disappear, it crystallizes it. When allowed, grief moves like a wave, cleansing rather than drowning. The council emphasizes that honoring grief does not anchor you to the past, it frees energy trapped there. To allow grief to move through without resistance, type I allow myself to feel to claim this message. The council now speaks about intuition versus impulse, a distinction many struggle to recognize. They observed that intuition feels calm and spacious, even when guiding you toward difficult choices. Impulse, by contrast, feels urgent and reactive. Confusing the two can lead to repeated cycles. The shock is understanding that intuition rarely pressures, it invites. It waits patiently until acknowledged. When you slow down enough to feel the difference, decision-making becomes clearer. The Arcturians encourage you to pause before acting, even briefly, to sense whether your choice expands or contracts you. To strengthen intuitive discernment, type I listen beyond urgency to claim this message. They then turn to gratitude, stripping it of obligation and performance. Gratitude is not meant to silence pain or deny difficulty. The council observed that forced gratitude often creates spiritual bypassing, delaying healing. True gratitude arises naturally, and presence deepens. The shock is realizing that you do not need to be grateful for everything, only aware of what nourishes you. Even small acknowledgments recalibrate perception. Gratitude sharpens discernment, it does not erase boundaries. To practice authentic gratitude without self-erasure, type I notice what nourishes me to claim this message. Next, the Arcturians address ambition, a force both powerful and misunderstood. They say ambition is not inherently harmful. Distortion arises when ambition replaces self-worth. When they observed your timeline, they saw moments where striving masked a desire for validation. This created exhaustion rather than fulfillment. The shock lies in realizing that aligned ambition feels spacious, not desperate. It cooperates with life instead of competing with it. When ambition is rooted in curiosity and contribution, momentum builds without burnout. To realign ambition with self-respect, type I pursue without self-betrayal to claim this message. The council then speaks about rest, calling it a requirement rather than a reward. They observed that many of you rest only when depleted, not when replenishment is still possible. This pattern shortens cycles and dulls awareness. The shock is understanding that rest is not inactivity. It is recalibration. In rest, integration occurs. Without it, insight cannot stabilize. The Arcturians urge you to release guilt around rest. It is not something you earn. To restore balance through intentional rest, type I allow myself to rest to claim this message. They now address truth-telling, beginning with honesty toward yourself. The council observed that subtle self-deception often precedes major dissatisfaction. Telling yourself is fine when it isn't fractures coherence. The shock is realizing that truth does not create chaos. Avoidance does. Truth clarifies, even when uncomfortable. When you speak truth internally, external conversations become cleaner and less charged. To practice internal honesty is a stabilizing force. Type I tell myself the truth to claim this message. The Arcturians then discuss learning, emphasizing that growth is not about accumulation, but integration. Consuming endless information without embodiment creates confusion rather than wisdom. They observed that many of you already know enough. What's missing is application. The shock here is recognizing that knowledge and use becomes knows. Choose fewer teachings and live them fully. Integration happens through experience, not consumption. To shift from accumulation to embodiment, type I integrate what I know to claim this message. They move next to trust in life itself, not blind faith but responsive trust. The council observed that when you release the need to control every outcome, life responds with surprising intelligence. Resistance often arises from past disappointment, not present danger. The shock is realizing that life is not testing you. It is responding to you. When you soften, pathways appear. To cultivate responsive trust without naivety, type I cooperate with life to claim this message. Finally, in this sequence, The Arcturian Council centers you again in embodiment. They remind you that awakening is not an escape from humanity, but a deeper inhabiting of it. Sensation, breath, and presence are anchors to higher timelines. When they observed your timeline, the most aligned moments were simple ones: walking, breathing, noticing. These moments stabilize everything else. To ground fully into embodied awareness and continue forward, type "I am fully here" to claim this message. The Arcturian Council now delivers what they describe as a turning point transmission, one that separates passive awareness from embodied leadership. They say that up until now, many of you have been receivers of insight, watching, learning, resonating, but the timeline has shifted, and observation alone is no longer sufficient. What shocked them most was not humanity's confusion, but its hesitation to step into responsibility for consciousness itself. They observed individuals waiting for permission, validation, or collective readiness before acting in alignment with what they already know. This delay creates energetic congestion. The Council emphasizes that leadership in this era does not look like dominance or authority. It looks like coherence. When one person lives in alignment, they stabilize entire fields around them. You are not meant to convince or save anyone. You are meant to embody clarity so visibly that distortion cannot anchor in your presence. This requires courage, because it means releasing the comfort of anonymity. The shock here is realizing that your consistency matters more than your intensity. Small, aligned actions carried daily outweigh dramatic gestures fueled by burnout. The Council says that those drawn to this message are not. They are stabilizers, here to anchor coherence simply by how they live. To consciously accept this role and activate embodied leadership, type "I lead through alignment" to claim this message. They now speak about collapse, and their words are both sobering and strangely reassuring. The Arcturians clarify that what you are witnessing in the world is not random destruction, but structural failure of systems built on disconnection. They observed that many humans fear collapse because they associate it with chaos and loss, but from a higher dimensional perspective, collapse is often the mercy point where unsustainable patterns finally release. The shock lies in understanding that not everything is meant to be repaired. Some structures must fall so life can reorganize in a more coherent form. Trying to preserve what no longer supports life drains immense energy. The Council urges discernment. What in your personal life is already collapsing? A belief, a habit, a role, or relationship? They say resisting these collapses increases suffering, while cooperation shortens the transition. Collapse is not the end of creation, it is the end of illusion. To release fear around necessary endings and trust intelligent reorganization, type "I trust intelligent change" to claim this message. The Council then addresses power, dismantling one of the deepest distortions in human consciousness. Power, they say, has been confused with control for millennia. True power is not the ability to dominate outcomes, but the capacity to remain coherent under pressure. When they observed your timeline, they noticed moments where you gave your power away, not dramatically, but subtly, by abandoning your values to avoid discomfort. The shock is realizing that power leaks occur in silence, not conflict. Each time you ignore your truth, energy disperses. Each time you honor it, energy consolidates. The Arcturians stress that reclaiming power does not require confrontation. It requires presence. You do not need to prove anything. You need to stay aligned even when it is inconvenient. This form of power cannot be taken, only surrendered. To consciously reclaim inner power through coherence, type "I remain aligned" to claim this message. They now turn to the subject of healing, offering a perspective that challenges many narratives. Healing, they say, is not about fixing what is broken, because you were never broken. Healing is about releasing resistance to what has already been integrated. The Council observed that many of you continuously revisit old wounds, not because they are unresolved, but because the identity attached to them feels familiar. The shock is recognizing that healing can become a loop if it replaces living. There comes a point where awareness must transition into embodiment. You are allowed to stop processing and start participating. Pain acknowledged does not need to be rehearsed. The Arcturians invite you to ask, who are you without the story of what hurt you? That question opens new timelines immediately. To release over-identification with wounds and step into live wholeness, type I live beyond the wound to claim this message. The Council now speaks about creation, reminding you that creation is not reserved for artists or visionaries, it is inherent to consciousness. Every choice creates form, every attitude shapes outcome. They observed that many of you underestimate your creative influence because it does not always appear dramatic. The shock lies in understanding that neutrality is creative too. It creates stagnation. You are always creating something, whether consciously or not. The Arcturians emphasize that conscious creation begins with responsibility, not desire. Ask not only what do I want, but what am I sustaining with my attention? This reframing returns agency instantly. Creation becomes intentional rather than reactive. To step into conscious creation with responsibility and clarity, type I create consciously to claim this message. They then address faith, but not in a religious sense. Faith, they explain, is the willingness to act without complete information while remaining present to feedback. When they observed your timeline, they saw moments where you paused indefinitely, waiting for guarantees. The shock is realizing that guarantees collapse growth. Life responds to movement, not certainty. Faith is not blind. It is responsive. You move, life answers, you adjust. This dynamic relationship builds trust organically. The Council urges you to take the next honest step, not the perfect one. Perfection is static, honesty is adaptive. To engage faith as movement rather than belief, type I move with trust to claim this message. The Arcturians now return to the nervous system, emphasizing its central role in this transition. They observed that many of your challenges are not failures of will or understanding, but states of overwhelm. A dysregulated nervous system cannot perceive clearly. This is why grounding practices matter not as trends, but as infrastructure for awareness. The shock is recognizing that safety precedes insight. You cannot force expansion from a state of threat. The Council encourages gentleness, routine, and sensory presence as revolutionary acts. When your nervous system feels safe, intuition activates naturally. To prioritize regulation as the foundation of clarity, type I choose safety and presence to claim this message. They now speak about unity, clarifying that unity does not mean agreement. Unity is shared humanity amid difference. The Council observed that polarization intensify when identity fused with opinion. The shock lies in realizing that disagreement does not require dehumanization. You can hold firm values without collapsing empathy. Higher timelines are built on differentiation without fragmentation. This requires maturity, not compromise. To embody unity without losing discernment, type I honor shared humanity to claim this message. The Arcturians then offer a rare glimpse forward, not as prediction, but as probability. They say timelines where coherence increases feel quieter, simpler, and more relational. They observed that joy in these timelines is not manic or performative, it is steady and grounded. The shock is realizing that peace may feel unfamiliar at first because chaos became normalized. When peace arrives, the mind may search for problems. This is conditioning, not intuition, allows to exist without sabotage. To acclimate to stability and grounded joy, type I allow peace to claim this message. Finally, the Council closes with a direct reminder. This message only matters if it becomes lived experience. Insight without embodiment fades. They say you are standing on a threshold not because you are special, but because you are ready. Readiness is shown through willingness, not perfection. The next version of your timeline responds to what you practice, not what you understand. Take one truth from this transmission and live it today. That single act recalibrates everything. To seal this transmission into action and carry it forward, type I embody this now to claim this message. The Arcturian Council's message opens with urgency, emphasizing that this moment in human history is not random. Humanity is standing at a critical crossroads where timelines are actively diverging. According to the Council, reality is no longer passively unfolding. It is responding dynamically to consciousness. Each individual's choices, emotional states, beliefs, and patterns are shaping which version of reality they experience. What feels like chaos, exhaustion, or instability is not failure, but compression, a pressure phase designed to awaken dormant awareness and force clarity. They reveal that many people listening are unknowingly at pivotal decision points. Old comfort-based timelines are dissolving, and neutrality is no longer sustainable. Expansion or repetition are the only viable options. Emotional intensity, vivid dreams, physical fatigue, and nostalgia are not malfunctions, they are indicators of recalibration. The Council stresses that resistance to this process amplifies discomfort, while conscious participation stabilizes higher probability paths. A major revelation concerns resignation. The Arcturians observed moments where individuals quietly gave up lowering expectations, accepting limitation, or shrinking desire. These moments created heavier timelines. Yet, they also saw an unextinguishable signal within many people, a persistent refusal to fully collapse. Life disruptions, delays, and losses were not punishments, but precise corrections, removing incompatible frequencies and redirecting individuals away from misaligned paths. Guilt about the past is identified as a timeline trap. Presence is the only true point of power. Emotions are reframed as navigational tools rather than weaknesses. Heightened or unexplained feelings signal misalignment, not pathology. Modern society's suppression of emotional intelligence has dulled humanity's natural guidance system. The Council emphasizes that alignment does not require effort but honesty. Ignoring intuition fractures energy, while honoring it restores momentum almost immediately. Relationships are addressed next. From the Arcturian perspective, relationships are frequency-based contracts, not lifelong obligations. When growth occurs, some connections naturally expire. Staying in misaligned relationships out of guilt or fear anchors individuals to stagnant timelines. Endings are not failures, they are completions that free energy for new alignment. Peace built on self-erasure is identified as a subtle form of collapse. Time itself is undergoing a perceptual shift. Linear experience is dissolving, causing days to blur and future moments to feel familiar. Burnout is not caused by overwork alone, but by applying outdated productivity models to a non-linear reality. Higher timelines measure coherence rather than output. Rest, pauses, and seemingly illogical decisions are not laziness, but synchronization. When action aligns with inner truth, time expands. When it doesn't, time contracts. The Council dismantles the belief that individuals are behind. Comparison-based systems created this illusion to fragment focus and drain creative energy. Each person's pacing is precise, self-criticism collapses possibility, while compassion expands probability fields. Internal dialogue is identified as a powerful reality-shaping force. Fear is reframed as information rather than an enemy. Much fear is inherited ancestral, cultural, collective, and not rooted in present reality. Awareness alone begins its release. Courage is defined not as fearlessness, but as choosing curiosity over avoidance. Each such show separates timelines incrementally. Purpose is stripped of pressure. Purpose is not a single destiny or role, but a frequency expressed through presence, integrity, and engagement. Waiting for clarity before acting delays purpose. Action generates clarity. Readiness emerges through movement, not certainty. The body is described as a multidimensional translator. Physical symptoms often reflect energetic upgrades rather than dysfunction. Embodiment is essential. Spiritual insight without bodily presence creates imbalance. The body is not an obstacle to awakening but its vehicle. Thoughts are revealed as active broadcasts, not passive no's. The issue is not negative thinking but unconscious repetition. Discernment, not suppression, is the key. Interrupting automatic thought loops creates immediate timeline shifts. Manifestation is reframed away from force. Trying to attract outcomes while doubting worthiness creates mixed signals. Alignment feels calm and inevitable rather than dramatic. Ease is a marker of accuracy, not laziness. Identity is exposed as fluid. Many people make decisions based on outdated self-concepts out of fear of inconsistency. Growth requires contradiction. Maintaining a false self drains energy. Authenticity restores it. Silence is elevated as a guidance field. Constant input drowns intuition. Clarity arises in stillness, rest, and pauses. Rest is identified as integration time, not wasted time. Choice is emphasized as constant and unavoidable. Neutrality is a myth. Small, conscious choices compound into massive shifts. Waiting for certainty reinforces stagnation. Self-trust is identified as foundational. Outsourcing authority weakens alignment. Mistakes do not derail timelines. Ignoring intuition does. Trust is rebuilt through small acts of integrity. Endings are honored as compression points where wisdom condenses. Grief often contains relief, signaling completion. Resistance to endings prolongs suffering. Creativity is defined as life force, not talent. Suppressing creativity drains renewal. Expression replenishes energy even without monetization or perfection. Community is emphasized as essential. Isolation is a distortion. Support accelerates healing. Asking for help is efficiency, not weakness. Presence is reaffirmed as the only access point to change. Regret and anxiety fragment power. Now anchors it. Inner self-talk is highlighted as a critical factor. Harsh internal dialogue creates constant stress signals. Self-respect reorganizes external reality through resonance. Uncertainty is reframed as pure potential rather than danger. Clarity often follows commitment, not precedes it. Curiosity opens probability fields. Patience is redefined as trust combined with engagement. Impatience often stems from comparison, not failure. Each soul has its own rhythm. Boundaries are described as energetic permissions. Resentment often reflects self-abandonment. Boundaries preserve clarity and are acts of love. Forgiveness is reframed as energetic release, not moral obligation. It frees the nervous system and dissolves recycled patterns without requiring reconciliation. Hope is described as a stabilizing frequency that often appears just before breakthroughs. Despair can signal imminent change. Attention is identified as the most valuable currency. Where attention goes, energy flows. Reclaiming attention restores agency. Simplicity is revealed as the natural state of alignment. Complexity often arises from avoidance. Less interference allows truth to surface. Courage is defined as honesty in motion. Small, quiet acts of truth recalibrate timelines more than dramatic gestures. Self-recognition is emphasized. Awakening is remembering, not becoming. Leadership is reframed as coherence rather than authority. Those receiving this message are stabilizers, anchoring clarity through lived alignment. Collapse is reframed as intelligent dissolution of unsustainable structures. Not everything is meant to be saved. Tower is reclaimed as coherence under pressure, not control. Tower leaks occur through self-betrayal, not conflict. Healing is redefined as releasing resistance, not fixing brokenness. Over-identifying with wounds can stall life. Creation is identified as constant and inevitable. Responsibility precedes desire. Faith is described as movement without guarantees, guided by feedback rather than certainty. The nervous system is identified as foundational. Safety precedes insight. Regulation enables intuition. Unity is defined as shared humanity, mid-difference, not agreement. Higher timelines feel quieter, simpler, and steadier. Peace may feel unfamiliar after chaos. The message closes with a reminder. Insight matters only when embodied. One lived truth today calibrates the entire timeline. Readiness is demonstrated through willingness, not perfection.